What's going on, guys? So I've been working on part 5 of my script for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was supposed to be 30 minutes long, and I didn't actually plan to upload it for the next few days, but you guys are writing asking me to upload the part, and due to such a huge demand, I've decided to split the last part into 2 parts. So this is not the ending, guys. There will be one more part in a few days, so enjoy it. Peter and Curtis are in the room. Peter explains to Connors that they need to hurry and that he asked if there are any safe places where Curtis can stay for a while. He explains that even though his house is still sealed by the police, there might be a way to get in. Peter grabs Curtis and they both head to Curtis' house. Next shot, while they swing in the darkness, you can see lots of people on the down streets running in panic. This part of Manhattan is going crazy. They reach the house and they enter through the roof's window. Curtis tells Peter that he's ready and willing to help him, though Peter explains that he can handle it. Right before Peter swings away, Connors grabs his hand and tells Peter that the man responsible for this disaster is Norman Osborne. Peter decides to stay for a while. Curtis explains that they both, Richard and him, were working for this person and that he still believes that the Osborne might have something to do with the disappearance of his father. Peter tells him to take care of himself and that he will be back. Next scene, Spidey jumps on the rooftop of one of the buildings. He sees lots of police cars down there. There are dozens of people stuck in the elevators. Next scenes are basically Spidey helping the citizens of New York City, everyone who is in trouble right now due to the blackout. We see him getting people out of the wrecked cars, and next shot, next scene, same night, we can see Max Dillon leaving the Oscorp tower among a few other researchers. There's press and news reporters around him. He explains to them that the man responsible for the disaster is obviously Spider-Man, who is apparently on his vengeance, who decided to revenge people of New York City for the hunt that was announced upon him a few months ago by Captain Stacy. He explains that Spider-Man was spotted leaving Oscorp station a few seconds before the explosion and that Curtis Connors, a fugitive whom Spidey helped to escape the prison, was along him. Next shot, you can actually see Spidey watching this live broadcast on one of the rooftops just above the street, but he doesn't interrupt it. After explaining that Oscorp cares about the people of New York City and after some sacrifices for the greater good made by a company themselves, Oscorp is ready to stop the mass panic on the street and bring Manhattan to its normal state. He walks in the middle of the wrong road while there is a huge crowd gathering around him. He puts both of his hands down the road and you can see a huge lightning flash that blinded everyone on the street. The lights are up. The city is alive once again. After a few seconds of silence, people start to clap their hands and they, including the news reporters, are basically begging Max to explain who is he and what just happened. Max explains to them that he is one of the Oscorp's brightest researchers and that if needed, he is ready to sacrifice his life for the good of the people. Peter, observing, decides not to interrupt. He understands that it's not the best moment to stop this crazy maniac. Next scene, Peter's house. Gwen and her family, as well as Mary Jane and Aunt May, sit around the kitchen table. Peter enters the living room and everybody looks shocked. Peter is obviously injured and Gwen is the first one to run to him. She asks what happened, to what Peter, not in a good manner, responds with counter-question. What are you doing here? Aunt May interrupts them by saying that Gwen and her family came to Queens a few hours ago due to the accident that happened in New York City. Mary Jane tells everyone that she heard a news reporter saying that they finally caught this maniac who escaped the prison, Curtis Connors, who was chilling in his own apartment. Peter grabs his head. He whispers to himself, "What is wrong with me?" You see, he obviously forgot about Connors in this whole mess and what? Asks Gwen. Peter explains that he got himself into a bus accident due to the blackout, and Aunt May goes to kitchen to grab some medicine, and when she's back, she noticed that Peter is no longer there. He went back to his room. Gwen, still shocked by such a response from Peter, still stands there in the middle of the living room. Gwen enters Peter's room and sees him putting off his damaged and teared up suit that is basically destroyed, that was under his clothes. Peter apologizes for his bad attitude and tells Gwen that she should keep a distance from him for now. It's dangerous to be together. She starts crying and begs Peter to explain what is going on. He tells her that it's complicated and that it involves his parents, obviously. Thought he still hugs and kisses her. Next shot, it's Oscorp's tower. A few people are sitting around the oval table in a huge room with many displays. A person in a wheelchair is along the mysterious person in the shadows I mentioned before is along them, as well as Max Dillon. So, you are back in business, Mr. Osborne. Yes, replies the mysterious man. Well, it's Norman Osborne. That's the biggest big reveal, you know, and I think you guys found out about it in previous parts. It was quite obvious. I gave a few hints. He looks old, he looks exhausted, and apparently for more than 4 years now he isn't able to walk, so that's why he's on a wheelchair. And I mentioned 4 years because I've been discussing this Easter egg, Norman Osborn's Easter egg, we've seen while Peter was searching for his parents in The Amazing Spider-Man, where he was reading all the articles. You can actually see in the Bing search bar a few articles that the last time Norman Osborn was seen was actually 4 years ago. So it's an Easter egg, and that's where the 4 years come from. In the continuation of this scene, you can see Norman explaining that he will continue his research since now he has all he needed before. On the displays around them, you can see lots of spider species and DNA of apparently human blood. It's Peter's blood sample being in the works for this mysterious research currently. Somebody is trying to enter the room, and it's Harry Osborn. Electro interrupts Norman by saying that his son is willing to see him. Norman tells Electro to get rid of him for now and tells him just to wait, basically. After a few silent seconds, Max interrupts Norman once again by saying that if he's really sure he doesn't want to see his son right now. Norman stares at Max for a few seconds with his dark, gritty eyes. He tells Max that he quickly made him a name, he made him powerful, and as quickly he can throw him back to being nobody. Max isn't really satisfied by such answer, but he stays quiet. And next scene, it's the next day, is basically Peter in his room, who just opened a briefcase. You can see a second pair of his new web shooters there. Also on his table you can see a huge opened book which is labeled Magnets and Electricity Study Guide. Now at this point you can see him carrying his new costume, which looks different but is obviously unfinished. Gwen enters the room asking about this costume she sees for the first time. He explains that it's something he's been working on for a while now. Next shot, Peter, you can see Gwen and her family heading to their car. Peter is carrying some things as well. They're moving back to their house. Gwen tells Mom that she needs just a few seconds to talk with Peter. She tells him that she hopes he will explain everything to her and that she is strong enough to wait. She also mentions that during whole night that new friend of his, Mary Jane Watson, kept asking questions about Peter and that she obviously likes him. Peter smiles. Later, he looks down. He tells her that apparently now he realized what her father meant to say before his death. Due to all the danger that surrounds him, they need to keep the distance, especially now. She starts crying once again and tells him once again that she is ready to wait if needed. They leave. While entering the living room, he hears on the TV that an arrest warrant for Spider-Man being announced right now once again. It's Daily Bugle's news channel, and JJ himself reports that Spider-Man is obviously involved in the disaster. Next scene, Peter is in his room on his computer and is busy going through all the articles on Norman Osborn. He found out that the last time Norman was seen in public was 4 years ago. Apparently Norman had a few unsuccessful trials at Oscorp, being the head of the Oscorp. He did the trials while, with the crossing animal species, and at Oscorp still up to date, is very private about these trials. They did not announce much. After his latest trial, the number 7, the 7th one, which happened 4 years ago, Norman Osborne disappeared and nobody has seen him since then. Obviously, Peter realizes that the big brain Osborne probably done the trials on himself, and they failed. Something happened to him back then, something that made him disappear and hide from the public. Peter looks on his wrist and observes a wound that Electro left on him after getting the blood sample. Now, you see, what Peter understood at this point is that he was framed for something he didn't do. The person to blame for the kidnap of Curtis and the explosion is most likely Norman Osborne. Also, Norman Osborne needed his blood sample, and he was using Richard Sparky's researches during his previous trials. So I guess you can see the picture, guys. Peter also finds out that information about Dillon on the web, who for all these years while working for Oscorp was considered to be actually a disaster, a failure researcher. He came across an article where it says that at some point the Oscorp's employee Max Dillon accidentally burned his house while testing some of his devices. Next scene, next day, it's morning. You can see the entrance to the Oscorp tower, and there are even more news reporters this time. They're explaining the events that happened here 2 days ago. "He's here!" somebody shouted. One of the news reporters just noticed that Spider-Man is obviously flying towards them. Spider-Man in a new costume with a belt, and obviously he looks very different now. He grabs this reporter's microphone and lands himself on a car. He says hello to everyone and explains that he is ready to willingly surrender to the police, only for a small offer. He explains that he wants to meet with the Oscorp's employee that had a late night show here yesterday. You can hear a police sirens. There's a massive crowd gathering around him.